Thragg stands as more than a political leader or military commander. He is the culmination of a belief system taken beyond its original limits. His relationship with Emperor Argall does not end with Argall's death. It intensifies. By preserving Argall's skull, speaking to it, and guarding it with unwavering dedication, Thragg transforms memory into something ritualistic. The object ceases to be a simple reminder of the past and instead becomes a vessel through which Thragg maintains a sense of direction, purpose, and authority. In doing so, he avoids confronting the reality that the guiding force he depended on is gone. Argall, as a ruler, embodied strength, discipline, and a vision of Viltrumite order. However, there is a crucial distinction between Argall's approach and Thragg's interpretation. Argall operated within a framework that allowed for balance. His rule, while harsh, still contained elements of restraint and foresight. Thragg, by contrast, removes that balance entirely.
Regent Thragg,
Emperor Argall,
what is your counsel?
the coalition will dissolve, and you, Emperor Argall, will finally be avenged.
What he inherits as ideology, he reforges into something absolute. Every value becomes non-negotiable, every principle becomes rigid, and every perceived deviation becomes intolerable. This transformation is not accidental. It is Thragg's way of ensuring that Argall's influence never fades, even if that means distorting it. The skull itself becomes central to this distortion. It functions as a physical symbol of continuity, allowing Thragg to act as though Argall's presence still legitimizes his rule. By speaking to it, he externalizes his internal conflict, framing his decisions as if they are aligned with an authority beyond himself. This dynamic shields him from doubt. If Argall's will is still present, then Thragg's actions cannot be questioned. They are simply extensions of that will. In reality, however, Thragg is both the interpreter and enforcer of a doctrine that no longer has a living source. This creates a closed loop where his beliefs reinforce themselves without challenge.
Emperor Argall showed us our strength.
Taught us our greatness.
It is done. I will not repeat myself.
Yes, Grand Regent.
For even in death, Argall still guides us. I failed you, my Emperor. But I will not fail our people.
This self-reinforcing system explains the extremity of his actions. The Viltrumite purge, for example, is often framed as a calculated move to strengthen the species. Yet its execution suggests something deeper, an overcorrection driven by guilt and fear. Thragg failed to prevent Argall's assassination, and in that failure he perceives weakness not just in himself, but in the entire Viltrumite population. The purge becomes a way to eliminate that weakness entirely, to ensure that such a failure can never happen again. It is not merely strategy, it is an emotional response elevated to policy, justified through an uncompromising belief in what Argall would have wanted. At the same time, Thragg's adherence is not without contradiction. Despite his ruthless ideology, he demonstrates moments of restraint that complicate his character. His willingness to spare Nolan, even after betrayal.
Come home, Nolan. Come home, and all will be forgiven.
And his decision to preserve the lives of Mark and other Viltrumites, despite catastrophic losses.
We are too few already.
Reveal an underlying priority, survival of the species.
They've gone to Earth.
These choices suggest that Thragg's belief system, while rigid, is not entirely blind. Instead, it operates with a hierarchy of values, where preservation can, at times, override punishment. This tension highlights the difference between blind fanaticism and something more complex, an ideology that adapts just enough to sustain itself, but never enough to fundamentally change. Emotion plays a critical role in sustaining this system. Thragg is not the cold, unfeeling figure he often appears to be. His grief at the destruction of Viltrum, his visible distress during the Purge, and his reverence for Argal all point to a deeply emotional core. However, rather than processing these emotions, Thragg channels them into his belief system. Grief becomes justification for vengeance. Guilt becomes justification for control. Loyalty becomes justification for extremity. In this way, his emotions do not weaken his ideology, they fuel it, giving it intensity and permanence.
I choose death!
Thragg's emotional state becomes the fire that keeps his belief in Viltrumite supremacy burning. Each of his most brutal decisions becomes a way for him to assert that he is fulfilling his duty to Argal, and by extension, to the very soul of Viltrum. Every violent action, every sacrifice he makes, every life he takes, is an act of dedication to an ideal that exists not just in his mind, but in the very bones of Viltrum's history, as symbolized by Argal's skull. What makes this dynamic so tragic is that, through all of his fervent dedication, Thragg is, in a sense, enslaved by the very ideal he seeks to protect. The skull, a symbol of the past, keeps him tethered to a vision of the Empire that no longer exists. This twisted relationship with Argal's memory distorts Thragg's perception of what is truly necessary to restore Viltrum. What could have been a moment of reflection, a chance to evolve or reassess, is turned into an obsessive fixation.
Even in death, Emperor Argall shows us there is a sickness in our society.
The belief that Argal's ideals must be preserved at all costs leads Thragg to become a zealot of his own creation, unable to move beyond a past that is irreversibly lost. In his attempts to uphold a vision that was never fully realized, Thragg becomes a prisoner of his own fanaticism. Thragg's inability to reconcile his emotions with his duty creates a kind of tragic paradox. He is both a zealot and a man caught in the undertow of his own past, desperately trying to preserve the remnants of what he once held sacred, even if it means twisting that very legacy beyond recognition. His devotion to Argal represents a self-inflicted prison, where his every action is a desperate attempt to atone for past mistakes and secure the future of his empire. In this light, Thragg's tragic flaw is not just his inability to let go of Argal's vision, but the fact that in his attempt to safeguard it, he sets into motion the very forces that will ultimately destroy it.
And Viltrum has never been weaker. 50 Viltrumites.
This devotion becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. Thragg's refusal to adapt, his insistence on absolute loyalty to a dead ruler, drives him to pursue a path of uncompromising violence and control. Every decision, every act of brutality, every sacrifice made in the name of preserving Viltrum's purity serves as a further step toward its inevitable ruin. And all the while, Thragg is unable to see that his unyielding commitment to a distorted ideal is what's slowly eroding the foundation he once believed unbreakable. His emotional motivations, his grief, guilt, and loyalty, are so deeply ingrained that they cannot be separated from the ideology he enforces. Thragg's own inner turmoil becomes the engine that powers his destructive path, leading him to destroy the very thing he is trying to protect.
The universe itself will kneel, as it was meant to be.
I will not risk even the smallest chance their empire could rise again.
It's over, Thragg. The entire galaxy is unified against us.
Thragg is a man consumed by his devotion, yet it is that very devotion that leads to the collapse of the empire he seeks to protect. His single-mindedness, while seemingly noble in its loyalty, proves to be his undoing. Thragg has become so consumed by the legacy of Argal, by the need to prove that he can be the perfect heir to Viltrum's ideals, that he forgets what it means to truly lead. Instead of shaping the future, he is trapped in a cycle of retribution, vengeance, and purification, a cycle that ultimately consumes both him and the empire he swore to protect.